Greetings, PCGen enthusiasts. This is Andrew Maitland with the PCGen project. Got a question from my YouTube channel here on what the file structure is for the PCGen program. I'm going to assume that the question is directed towards the list file and homebrew side of things and not the Java, because I wouldn't be able to explain the Java very well. What you have on here is basically both a game mode and all the basic files that would be possible to use in PCGen 6.6 when it comes out, or what we can use today with the 6.5.5. So starting off, I've got my BIOS settings file here. This can be both a game mode or a regular list file. This is basically how we set the different age groupings, the adulthood, middle age right here, and then old, and then it basically breaks down, you know, your base age, max age, what the die roller, if it was doing random, your stat penalties that are applied, etc., etc., and then all the other things that are associated with class. I don't delve into this file too often. It's pretty arcane in its setup, and if you look here, it's not a format that we use for pretty much anywhere else in the file, so it's a very old format. But that is a interchangeable. You can use it in either the game mode or, like I said, it can be a list file in your regular data files. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Locations is basically, if you ever used the randomizer before, this is where all the words are inserted from. You know, you got your location, birthplace, and city. So you can have fun with that. You can actually add to those. Traits, another basic list of items that you can add in here. And you can see we got quite a list. Speech, phrases. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Lots and lots of catchphrases. Someone was very creative. And then your phobias. Lots of phobias. I think woman's mentioned 3 times in here. Yep, beautiful women, women in general, and ugly women. Interesting. And as men, yep. Someone had a lot of fun with this. So that's your traits. That's for the little randomizer in the game system. Equipment slots, this is how we determine what items can go on what body parts. So if you got your head slot, only headgear can go there and only one, and it's going to take that head number, which is 1, and so on and so forth. So this is why you can only wear 2 rings on your fingers, otherwise you'd only be able to wear 1. And that's a game mode file right there. This is how PCGen figures out your leveling. Your level equals the level, basically. Min XP, a little formula here. Your class skill maximums, your cross-class skill maximums are set up here as well. Load is basically your size, and then your strength. So if your strength is a 6, you'll be able to carry 60 pounds, and then it's modified by whatever your size here. And then your encumbrance values and your load multiplier. Migration is a recent new file, only been around for the last couple production cycles, where when we change things, we can update them. So, for instance, back in 6.0, rings had this format, a ring, and then the parentheses, and then what it was. And then we changed it to ring of elemental command air. Made it a little bit easier. Miscellaneous info file is also game mode only. And this is where we can set up quite a few different things. What the armor class AC name will be. We can make it defense value or hardness rating or whatever. Your hit points, what stacks with your bonuses, your monetary values, which is why I still have to use separate game modes for a few things that use dollars or pesos or whatever. And then all the tabs that you see, modern takes away the domain tab, so it would be visible, no. And then what game modes are allowed here. and then range penalties, and all these other things. So this is basically, game mode files are things that are not likely to change at all. They should be pretty consistent. You get a stat every 4 levels, you get a bonus feat every 3 levels, or every 2 levels on the odd when you're in Pathfinder, the epic stuff, what class types are available, your AC values, which are exported to the PDF sheet, and then how we do our dice ranges, and then the size penalty, the weapon types, and the abbreviations that will go with them, our weapon categories, the non-weapon proficiency penalty, the different wield categories for 3.5 in Pathfinder, and then, interesting, okay, and then roll methods, the different, you can do imperial or metric, and then a few other fun items, default ability categories, and then this is how we set up which preview directory you'll be sent. So when you're in the fantasy setting, you're not going to be getting the modern character sheets. We can set up your default preview sheet, that's the character tab, and then what information's shown on the summary, which format your skills will be seeing, where the output sheet directory starts, our default PDF, our default HTML for your exports, die values, what stuff can be resized. This is how we set if it's a drop-down PC or a drop-down NPC, and then a default data set. This is the point buy method. This basically you only get 1 for your costs, and then you can assign how many points. Rules are where we hide our house rules. Kind of going away from this, making it more ability and variables, since we now have Boolean capabilities coming down. Size adjustment. This actually needs to be modified a little bit, but I'm not going to do that for the video. Stats and checks. This is revised for the 6.6 release that's going to be coming out soon. All this holds is your bonus spell, what level of bonus spell, and how often you'll get a bonus. So for level 1, if you have a intelligence score, for example, of 12, you'll get 1 additional bonus spell, and then the stat range, every 8 points, you'll get another. So at 20, 28, etc., etc., etc. And that's how it calculates that. And if you ever see those wonderful little tips, these are the tips. Each line is a separate tip. And we also have language tips. So if you want to have French or Spanish or anything else, you can do that here. This is the PCC file. Now we have moved from the game mode strictly to what the most homebrewers are going to be dealing with. So like I said in one of my other videos, your PCC file is what the program looks for, and it basically grabs all the information in here and it takes these references, and that's how it loads the files. So your allowed files here are basically, you can do a PCC reference to another file, which I've got set up here for conversion support. The alignment that was taken from stats and checks now resides here. As you can see, alignment's right here. We have data controls right here. This is your fact and fact definitions, or your fact set definitions. Your saving throws go in this file, and your attribute, stats, abilities, whatever you want to call them, go right here. And then you only need 1 file of each type if you really want to be particular here. So you can have an ability file, which is how we do your feats, class abilities, racial traits, racial features, that sort of thing. Ability categories is the master holder. So this is a parent category, special ability, ability focus, and a recent addition I added, class. And then these are your sub groups. Now we call them ability category, but they're actually ability pools. So when you see that bonus ability pool, that's what this is referring to. So this is how we set up various different things here. So there's your race traits, sub races, and then your class features right here, and then all sorts of fun little pools. And this is a little bit easier for people to use to select items. A class file is where you hold your base classes and your prestige classes and your monster classes. So this is a base class right here. Pretty typical setup. You can scroll down. I've tried to consolidate things to make the files a lot easier to navigate so it fits in one page. Our NPC classes, so NPC, and then we get into our prestige classes. So all our prestige classes, and then Epic support is down here. And then moving on beyond the prestige classes, support for fractional BAB, and then we go into our monster classes. These are for creatures with racial levels. We try to make them just the race type and get away from specific racial levels unless they have a specific progression. And then for companion mods, this is how animal companions and your special mounts and all that function. This is how it takes these values and throws it together. So you actually have an increase in your creature. Okay, moving along, we have our deity file. This is where we set up deities and what domains they have. Pathfinder is a little bit more complicated. I will actually navigate over to the Pathfinder side just to show you the complications involved here. So deity, you can see we have the domains all set up over here. Let's go to the APG and show you. That should have our base ones. So now we have modified deities with the subdomains. But it gets even more fun. Now we have these variables down here, and this is what actually supports what Inquisitor domains are allowed. The Inquisitors don't use the domain system per se, but they do get domains. So as you can see, it got a little more complicated, but adapt and overcome. So that's how deities work for Pathfinder. Domains, Pathfinder's a little more complicated, but for domains here, we put them all in here, your pre-aligns, your ski skills, and then any abilities. And this is what you'll see on the character sheet, or on the UI I should say, and then the domain, what it's granting. A little overlap there though. Equipment file is where you have your armor, your weapons, everything else. Pretty straightforward. Equipment mods are the things that the customizer will grab for you and applies them. So masterwork, and you'll see that there's 4 different masterworks. And these are based on the ammunition or weapon, armor and shield, instrument, or tools. So they all have different varying costs. This one says 0, and you're like, oh my lord, that can't be right. Well, you go over here. Ammunition gets a cost 6, a weapon gets 300, and then it gives a enhancement bonus. It's assigned to the entire item because you can't really have a partial masterwork. We still separate out the feats into their own file, but this is actually an ability file because you can see I got category feat, and these are all your feats. We switch from pre-feat to pre-ability, so all the feat references are pretty much non-existent as of 6.6. So when that release comes out, you won't see any of that left. So your descriptive is your short text for feats, and then we go all the way to the end. Let's cheat and use my apparently we don't have it here. We got it modded down here. Well, if we did have the benefit text is your full fluff. So apparently we don't have the full fluff on here, which is rather surprising. Okay, moving on. Kits. A kit is an item that can be applied to pretty much any race or specific creatures. Here we have a dwarf default. You can apply this kit as long as it doesn't have any race, or if it's one of the dwarven races. It will make it a dwarf as long as it's not already a dwarf. It will actually make the name dwarf for you assigns the alignment of lawful good, will give you 1 level of warrior, sets the stat string to 13, 11, 12, 10, 9, 8, 2 ranks in listen, spot, and appraise, and it gives you appraise for free. And gives you a weapon focus, dwarven war axe, and then equips scale mail, a shield, the dwarven war axe, and a short bow, and it's equipped in the primary hand and carried, and it's sized appropriately to the PC. Languages. Languages are pretty simple here. Put the name of the language you want, and then you can add a type to it. Spoken, written, read, common, dwarven, sublanguage, whatever. Druid to prevent it from being taken. We put a little pre-tag there, and all the other fun stuff. Moving on, we have proficiencies for your armor. The types really shouldn't work, so I ignore the types. Your shields and weapons. And then we have ye old races. And this system is something I set up, so you only have to select 1 dwarf or 1 elf or 1 gnome instead of all these different sub-races. And then it sets it up through race stuff here. And you can actually select your sub-race and it will apply all the nifty modifiers for you. Skills, name, what the key stat that uses, does it have an AC check penalty, what type, so you can use it untrained, is it visible, and then the source page, and then any extra bonuses that we want to include. And then spells can include the classes that are allowed. What type? Is it arcane? Is it divine? You can even assign domain, primary school, your sub-school, descriptors if applicable, some variants, they do happen every now and again, your components, your cast time, what the range is. If you put in close, medium, or long, it actually calculates it out for you. And that's actually from the miscellaneous info file that we had back here. And I will actually go up here for you just real quick to show you how that is. So here we go. Close, medium, and long. Caster level divided by 2 times 5 plus 25. Then the caster level times 10 plus 100, and then caster level times 40 plus 400. So that's how those ranges are actually calculated. Can you make it into a potion? What the target area? This can be effects, targets, target area, duration, how long does it last? You can use your caster level here. That will insert the appropriate class level if it's a wizard spell or a cleric spell or whatever you have. Save information. This is basically, are you going to use will? This is all pretty much string text right here. Spell resistance, yes, no, maybe so. Source page, short descriptive. As you see, this is actually a short descriptive. This is the short text because I got the pre-roll here. If you were to switch on the display the full spell, then we swing all the way down towards the bottom here, and that will actually hold. Here we are. So acid arrow, you get the full text right here because it's got the full spell. So what's the difference between that one and the other one? That exclamation mark in front says the opposite. So you cannot have that versus you can. And then up here, I skipped over, this is the spells, and these are all your basic temporary modifiers that you can access. So when you're using your bless or any other spells that modify your character, this is where those are stored. So we put the spell, we modify it, we do our choosers, and then our temporary bonuses, and is it to anyone or is it to only the person that possesses the spell? And for some of these, let's see if I can find it. There we go. You can use a variable. And I know for our size modifying stuff, like enlarge, I will actually use a variable that will call something else. And then finally, but not least, are templates. Templates can be used for many things. The general use is to apply a template like half giant or half elemental, half celestial, half dragon, etc., etc., etc. You can have a visibility on them, so none of these are going to show up. This is how we set up the subraces, favorite classes, automatic languages, bonus languages, and then the subrace with the actual name and any other fun items we want to add. A little bit later, you can set up non-stats. This is actually our fun little calculator that determines base races and all that fun stuff. If you want to actually give yourself a different race type, I included that for our homebrew people. And your inherent values, you can use that. And we'll select one of these down here. So there is choosing available. And then a little experiment just for kicks and giggles. And then for other temporary modifiers, so we can do the choose number down here, temporary descriptive, temp bonus, and now that's where your conditions are coming from. So when you're fighting defensively, or you're sickened, or anything like that, that's where that falls from. So that's the basic file setup, their purposes, and the structure. So you can see over here, let's just go to the core rulebook. This is pretty much the gist over here. Your Pcc file, and then all the other files in the same folder unless there's support. And I won't get into the support structure so much so because that's another couple minutes to explain. Anyways, I hope that explains everything you want to know about the file structure of PCGen and how the files interact. Until next time, take care.